You talked about Mrs. Sullivan and being a joy to work with. What made her special and what made you continue along working with widows?
When you have a single decision maker who's grateful for help, it's so much easier to support her and on her journey. And there's always, they've lost their person, their spouse, who was their handyman, their financial person, maybe the cook, the errand boy, all these things. And what they really are looking for is a thinking partner. And it's a real joy to work with someone as a thinking partner. When you're suddenly alone, there's a lot of fear. So you can go into a mode of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to spend anything. Like we had a client who canceled the daily newspaper because she just thought like she couldn't even afford that. Meanwhile, she was fine. Or there's the opposite, like something tragic happened in my life and I'm going to seize the moment and I'm going to live with abandon all the moments of my life, and that's not a good thing either.
But does it have to be painful? I mean, some people would swear by those daily coffees and say, oh, but you don't need them.
How can you make it a game? How do you build in something that it becomes a little bit more special as opposed to just the habit, and you don't even realize why you're doing it because it's not bringing you any joy. It's just a habit that you do day in and day out.
What does it take to be a financially empowered woman? And what can financially empowered women do together to change the world? A shocking statistic is that around 400,000 women in Australia are at risk of homelessness. And the cause of this is the lack of education about how to build a financial foundation, starting even before we first enter the workforce and well into our retirement years. My name's Dion Payne, and I'm the founder of the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm passionate about ending homelessness, and as part of that passion, I chose to look at the systemic barriers that are causing homelessness for women in the first place. The Financially Empowered Women podcast is designed to bring you the best experts from around the world to increase your financial know-how and give you practical and women-specific tips to overcome the challenges you might be facing, such as how to negotiate a better salary, demystifying super, or how to navigate a separation and ensure the assets are distributed fairly. My role is to provide you with the best information out there to change your trajectory and become a financially empowered woman, because you deserve it, and the world needs you more than ever to own your worth and help others to do the same.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Financially Empowered Women podcast. My name's Dion Payne, and today I have Paula Harris joining me. Now, Paula is a TEDx speaker and a co-founder of Cornerstone Investments, as well as being a financial advisor. Paula helps to empower widows with financial knowledge. Paula loves building meaningful connections and strives to live with possibility, wonder, and joy. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Dion. I'm excited to be here. And your accent just makes me feel so good. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, Paula, could you tell us a little bit about where you started that has got you to this point?
Sure. So when I first started working, I ended up in a role in human resources, and I was doing a lot of recruiting of highly competitive people and running a human resource department for a financial services company, credit card company in particular. And my husband had started the business that we were in, and we did all these walks and talks for months and years, working on the business, planning the business. And then the opportunity came up for me to enter the business. So we took his sort of spreadsheet knowledge and my people person skills, and we sort of married them together to help our clients in a whole new way. And one of our earlier significant clients was a widow named Mrs. Sullivan, who was a pure joy to work with and sort of helped us get on the path of working with more widows.
Cool. So you talked about Mrs. Sullivan and being a joy to work with. What made her special, and what made you continue along working with widows?
So having someone who really needs help, grateful to get the help, and implements the help makes the job of a financial advisor so much more rewarding. as opposed to sometimes people who think they want help and then they challenge you on everything that you've advised them on and then they don't follow through. So it becomes really an awkward kind of relationship. And when you have a single decision maker who's grateful for help, it's so much easier to support her and on her journey. And there's always, they've lost their person, their spouse, who was their handyman, their financial person, maybe the cook, the errand boy, all these things. And what they really are looking for is a thinking partner. And it's a real joy to work with someone as a thinking partner.
Yeah, cool. And what are some of the challenges that you find affect widows that don't necessarily affect the rest of the clients that you work with?
I think there's, well, there is a lot of overlap for between clients who maybe are coupled or clients who are single. I think probably one of the biggest ones is the fear of will I be all right? When they know that it's only them to rely on, will they have the skills, the knowledge, enough of resources to take care of themselves in their lifetime? And they don't want to be a burden to someone else, if they have children, especially to the children, or to society. And, how will I know I'm making the right decisions? How will I know that I'm not getting taken advantage of? Who will help me figure out the things that I don't know? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that sets a widow apart. But I'd say any single woman, it could potentially, and it depends if she's been single all her life. She may be a little bit more self-reliant, but if she maybe got into a situation where she got divorced, that could be a little bit scary for her.
Yeah, divorce is a big one as well. But I guess with any situation where there was a partner and then there's not a partner, there is that initial lack of confidence of, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able
Yes.
to make this work? So
Yes, absolutely.
I can see that with your human resources background and your people skills, a part of your role would be to just reassure them that, they can do it and they've got it, and there's other women that have gone before them.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you end up being the counselor, not even just for the finances. I was with a friend recently whose husband's been gone just about, it's getting close to 3 months. But within like the first 2 days, she had a leak in her roof. And it was the first time like he wasn't there and he wasn't there to fix it. And she had to fix it. And then she had to change a tire recently. Like all these first things that you have to do. And it's like scary, but when it's done, it's empowering, or finding like people to help you if you didn't already have them. I think the biggest thing too is be willing to ask for help and accept help for all aspects of your life when you have to navigate your path forward alone.
Yeah. Um, so a question then for somebody who has, for a woman who's become alone through whatever reason, what are the, what's the kind of financial steps that they should take to get themselves back on their feet and be able to rely on themselves financially?
Yeah. The tricky part is, has she been working and earning her own income, or is she having to go back to work? And that can be tricky. We have a friend who had gone back to work 2 weeks before her husband suddenly died, and after raising the kids, so her skill level wasn't at, that high because she hadn't been working in a long time. And how do you make enough money to support yourself? So that's a big deal. So I think there's a couple of things: is making sure that you do keep your skills sharp. Nowadays, it's like, how are your computer skills? And people think just because they use a cell phone that means they're adept at typing with the thumbs. But there's so much more to it. And we were talking off camera, but how quickly it's moving, and how you have to stay on top of that. So it's keeping your skills sharp that way. There's also like, when you're suddenly alone, there's a lot of fear. So you can go into a mode of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to spend anything. Like we had a client who canceled the daily newspaper because she just thought like she couldn't even afford that. Meanwhile, she was fine. So you could get to the point where you're hermiting and you're not spending and you're not taking care of yourself. Or there's the opposite, like something tragic happened in my life and I'm going to seize the moment and I'm going to live with abandon all the moments of my life. And that's not a good thing either, because it's just like I actually had a woman call me a few months ago, and said her husband on his deathbed said, "I really want you to have that nice car." And I think it was like a Cadillac SUV or something. It was like a 80 to $100,000 car. So when she got the insurance money, which was, let's say, maybe 250,000, she took 100,000 of it and bought a car. She was now living in the car because she couldn't afford housing. And she had all this emotional sort of baggage about he wanted me to have this car. She paid outright for it as opposed to, maybe, buying it on with a payment plan. But she didn't want to hear the answer, but it was like, you need to sell that car. That you cannot be living in a car. And couch surfing, and this was probably a woman in her 50s. So there's this, like, I'm going to make decisions with abandon that may not serve her either, because it's just I've seen how someone's life can get cut short, and I don't want that to happen to me. So maybe they over travel, they overspend, they're over generous to people. I was talking to a friend who lost her husband suddenly in a very financially comfortable situation, and I said, you have to be careful that everybody doesn't come to you because they want something. And she said, that's what's happening. Everybody wants something from me. And it's exhausting. And you have to be careful not to become someone else's purse. Your adult children, are not making good decisions. I met a woman on a trip recently, and, son has a gambling problem, and she's been subsidizing it for years, and she knows she has to stop. There's all these things that happen where you often talk about, when you're on the airline and the message says, if the oxygen mask falls, you put it on yourself first. And that's really what you need to do. Is you may have limited resources, or limited skills. So you need to make what you have really last for your lifetime, so that you're not a burden to someone else, and you're able to take care of yourself and not get distracted by oh, it would be nice to have that new shiny pair of shoes or that fancy car. But, like, what is a need versus a want? I think that's probably really thinking about that.
Yeah, which leads into the next question that I have about how somebody can ensure that they have a fully abundant financial future. So in the case where you were talking about the lady with the car, where she spent $100,000 on the car, she wasn't actually thinking about the rest of her lifetime and what she would need, like once she stops working, when she retires, all of that sort of thing. So what kind of advice do you have in that scenario?
Ideally, hopefully, you've been following the principles of start early saving, because the power of compounding is such a big deal. And making sure, like, if anyone's listening that has younger children, if you can get them saving in their teens and in their 20s, the power of compounding is tremendous. So hopefully those good habits are set in place. And then I think one of the other things and I think this is probably a global issue, is we don't really value delayed gratification anymore. We want it, and we want it now, and Amazon will deliver it. I ordered something yesterday afternoon. We decided we wanted a scanner for the home office, and they said we could deliver it between 4 and 8 a.m. or 10 and 3. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do not eat it that fast. But, like, okay, you're offering it, I'm gonna take it. So we have to be careful that we put off what we maybe don't really need. I think about, like, when you're raising kids, it used to be like, okay, create your birthday list, create your Christmas list, and you would think about it for weeks to months ahead of time. And now it's like, oh, I can just buy it today. Like, we don't wait for special occasions. So it's learning the habit of delayed gratification. Thinking about, if I see this and I come back in 48 hours, do I still need it? Do I still want it? And sort of putting that little bit of time separation in there to decide, is it really that important? And I think that's a really good habit. And I think the other thing we talk a lot about is paying yourself first. So too many of us save what's left over at the end of the month or the end of the paycheck or whatever it is. And there's often not much left over because we've taken care of all of our wants and needs. So instead we say, okay, I'm going to save 5%, 10%, 20% of my income straight off. It's going to go into a separate account, whether that be in a bank or in a brokerage house. Have it go in first, and then miraculously you've paid yourself, you have some savings, and you'll live over off of what's left, as opposed to, oh, I'll save what's left. And that is another good tip for people.
Great, thank you. I when you were talking before, it made me think of something I was talking to my children about, impulse gap action, which was a concept that I learnt a little while ago. And basically saying you might feel the impulse to do something, but the longer the gap between the thought and the action, the more intelligent your decision is. So going back to what you were saying about delayed gratification, I think that that's a really really good way to describe it.
I agree with you. And I actually even heard this same concept related to the news cycle. And I'm assuming the news cycle is as fast in Australia as it is in the US.
Yes.
And people's heads are blowing up because this was said, and then 10 minutes later, this was said. And someone suggested, okay, after 3 days, go back and research that topic. And if it's still, you know, still the same issue and it's still got the same intensity, then it might be something to be concerned about.
That's a great way to think.
Isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, obviously the media, in terms of the product that they sell, it relies on getting people stirred up and being fast and um, having people feel anxious.
And the same thing, I think we've become such consumer societies. So, your magazine ads, the ads that come to you on social media, billboards, like where all this is just meant to separate you from your money. And it's your job to say, yeah, is this really important? That, wait before you take action.
Yeah. One of the things that we do with the kids, which I really like, is we will see an advert on the telly and we'll dissect it. So, it's essentially just getting them to be able to analyze critically the advert so that they can do that consistently. So that, there might be an advert that comes up. My son really wants to get a Nintendo Switch, and so he's showing me all the, ads and the brochures for a Nintendo Switch. But yeah, it's just that whole thing of when you can think critically about what's being presented to you, you can make better decisions.
Absolutely. And I think that goes through all avenues of our lives. And critical thinking is probably one of the greatest skills we can learn that isn't necessarily taught in school. And I applaud you for teaching it at home.
Thank you. Um, Now, I mean, on that, there's a lot of this Nintendo Switch question comes up a lot because a lot of my son's peers have some kind of gaming system, and my son doesn't want to be left out of the equation. But, he's not the only one. So social pressure is quite a big thing. How do you advise people to overcome that? And what is the impact of that social pressure when it comes to being financially empowered?
Yeah, I have given up television. And so my usual answer to most people is stop watching television. And when you don't watch the constant news media cycle, I think that helps a lot. So you're not so much pressured by what the latest it thing is. You just don't know about it. And it was very freeing for me to be like, yeah, I don't necessarily see first run movies. I don't necessarily watch the up and coming television. I watched Ted Lasso this summer, which was like 3 or 4 years old. I was like,
That
oh,
was
well,
a
that's what everyone
great
talked about.
show.
I really enjoyed it a lot. It was really fun, and I'm like, it's being comfortable in your own skin to say, like, I know what's best for me, as opposed to somebody else who's sort of talking at you and trying to fill your head with what they think is the right thing for you. We call a lot of talking heads in the financial world sort of financial pornography. They want to guide you to buy a stock. They want to guide you to buy this product, as opposed to like, did I even need that? Like that doesn't, when you have a single woman and they think they have to buy life insurance, like, who are you insuring? Like, oh, but I have to. It's like, it's separating the fear, because somebody put fear in you, and saying, like, the critical thinking. come back to say, okay, is this important? So it's really, yeah, putting on your critical thinking skills and saying this is not important. And yeah, I'm a big get off television.
You also talk about the latte effect. What is that?
Ah, yes. There's an author, David Bach, who wrote a book called Automatic Millionaire. And so there's this trend that has started of buying coffee out. So, somehow all the coffee makers at home, even though we got these 1 cup Keurigs and everything, just don't seem to cut it anymore. And so we have to go to the corner place and we have to buy our coffee. And we don't just buy a cup of coffee. We now buy the latte mocha cappuccino half decaf. Like I can't. I have a hard time going to that one store that's probably around the entire world where like they don't even use the sizes small. It's like grande and venti, and it's like. But we go in and it's like it starts to add up. So it's like $6 or $7. And while you're there, you're like, yeah, I am hungry because you've just put in front of me this amazing looking, or maybe even not that amazing, croissant or something. And so you end up walking out with 2 items that ended up costing you $13 or $14. And you do this every day without thinking about it. And oh, you know what? I'll throw in a bottle of water too. And next thing you know, you're just leaking money. And this happens in all aspects of our lives. And I have to say, my husband's trying to do this coffee latte thing. And I just like, what are you doing? Stop. Um, so it's having to be very careful that the leakage of money that happens, it's the, oh, just throw it in the basket. It's only, the rounding up. And when you start to like look at that on a weekly or monthly or annual basis, it's real. If you spend $15 a day on coffee and you just did that, 10 times in a month, $150. 300 if you did it 20 times. 300 times 12 is $3,600. Like when people say, I don't know where I can save money, it's like, let me look at your spending habits and we can quickly figure out how you might save some money.
But does it have to be painful? I mean, some people would swear by those daily coffees and say, "Oh, but I need them." So does it have to be, yeah, does it have to be painful?
I would say, like, when people start to convince that you need something, is it even a treat anymore? Like, where is it? Where's there something special? So you can say, okay, like we have a place around where we live called Cumberland Farms, and you can go get a coffee, an iced coffee for like $2, and you can add your cream, and it's not going to be as fancy. But could you do that 5 of the days, and 2 of the days you go get the extra fancy one? You referenced Nintendo. So how can you make it a game? The gamification. Where can I find the best one of these? And I'm going to reward myself because I went to the gym. Like, how do you build in something that it becomes like a little bit more special as opposed to just the habit, and you don't even realize why you're doing it because it's not bringing you any joy. It's just a habit that you do day in and day out. So I talking making it a reward instead of we get our spending often becomes such a habit we don't even realize we're doing it, and we don't actually even get joy from it.
Look, there's two things in there that you were talking about. One about joy. I think that's really important to focus on the joy and to put the basically to put that your future self and sort of thinking about, okay, well, I'm in not spending this money and saving this money. I'm looking after my future self, and that's a joy because what will I be able to do in the future? And but also when you said about spending being automatic, saving can be automatic as well.
Yeah, great points. And we sort of touched on the automatic savings earlier. But getting out, there's good habits and there's not so good habits. So it's when does a habit serve you? And then, sometimes we just so automatic about doing something, we like never even realized that didn't serve me. And that living with joy, it's hard, especially when you've been through maybe some tough time, to say, okay, where do I get joy? And people often do it in retail therapy, buying things, and then you end up with a house full of crap that you don't know want anymore. We had a client who worked with someone who was buying from QVC, like having watching television and buying, and they had put all this stuff in the garage, and they could barely put the garage down because it was just boxes they didn't even open. And that was just to make themselves feel better because they needed the interaction of talking to someone when they ordered, and then someone showed up at their house delivering something. So I don't think that was bringing joy. And I think sometimes it's hard to imagine that you will have joy later on, um, but not having the choice is worse to me. You know, if you rob your future self today of the potential of a really good tomorrow, that's hard. So it's such a balancing act of doing enough good things, but there's so many things that you can do that don't necessarily cost you. We were talking earlier off camera about nature and how important it is to be in nature. Just being outside, and I think is just a huge reward, and often that's free. So how do you do things that allow you to feel good every day while still allowing you to have a brighter future?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And it reminds me of, I know that when I feel a bit out of sorts, going for a beach walk or going for a walk in nature really helps me to get out of my head and then just be present to, oh, well, yeah, look, it's not that bad because look at this, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think nature is a great reset, and I make sure I get out every day, because it's just so powerful to be, sort of, I think, touching the ground, in some way and feeling the wind or the sun on your face. It just makes you realize, how alive you are.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious about when it comes to financial matters, often we don't know what we don't know. So sometimes it's really good to seek out help and seek out advisors. Who would you say should be on your personal board of financial yeah, your personal financial board?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that one of the important things is to gather these people before you necessarily need them. So I think having someone that can help advise you, on legal matters, if you're settling, making sure you're protected if, for your future, or if you're settling an estate of a loved one, you definitely need to have someone who can help you with legal matters. Tax matters are always important too. So having someone that can help you, whether it's filing your taxes each year or doing something more complicated, I think that's a really important person. I'm a little biased, but I do believe that professional financial advice is worth a lot. And I think one of the struggles that sometimes people have is that they get caught up with any of these services, like, oh, I don't want to pay. I'm afraid, I had a woman recently, who's like, I'm afraid to pay for managing money. I said, well, sometimes it's not just that we manage money, we help advise on all the decisions you have to make. And you make one poor decision and it could cost you tens of thousands. So thinking broadly about the advice that you get is key. And I think also beyond sort of the financial aspects, is there a coach, or a therapist, a clergy member that's part of your team that helps you navigate sort of these tougher times? I think that's really important to think about. And I am also a real big proponent on health. So who's on your health team? I think, some of the alternative health practitioners like chiropractors and acupuncturists, functional medicine, helping you to live a whole, full life, I think is really, really important. So I encourage people to think about that aspect of their sort of personal board of advisors as well.
I think that's brilliant because number one, if you don't have good health, it doesn't matter how much money you've got. I mean, you can get more sophisticated products perhaps to get you better, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to be well rather than being unhealthy or diseased in some way. So I think you're right. Focusing on your personal health team is really important.
Yeah. And it will save you money in the long run too. Ideally, if every, some of us have better genes than others, but I think it's worth an investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So That's a great segue into my question about investing in yourself. So, what's your advice to women on how they can invest in themselves fully to just be able to achieve what they can, the best that they can?
Yeah, I think there is the constant and never ending improvement. It's the always learning. And it doesn't in some ways matter what you're learning. It's that you're being curious, using your critical thinking, and finding ways to always discover something more and different. So being curious, and asking those follow-up questions. When you don't understand something that a professional service advisor is saying to you, don't hesitate to say, could you explain that in plain English? Could you say it in another way? I think that's really important. And I think not being afraid to spend money on making sure your skills are up to date, whether that's your computer skills, you need a certification in your employment, whether you use a personal trainer, like investing that way, and making sure that for some people, their physical presence really matters, and maybe their employment. So I have a friend who's done a lot in selling fabrics. So like having her nails done was always important. So, if there's something that really helps you to make sure you stay top of game, and it allows you to earn more money, I think that's a great way to think about, like, that's an investment, not just a nice to have. What are the ways that you put, like, I go to the chiropractor probably 2 times a month. I love it. They work on me physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So it is like a tune up. It's like a life tune up. And I have nothing wrong with my back. So everyone always asks that. So that money is very well spent to keep me grounded and even, and I'm investing back in my overall health. So those are just some tips and thoughts of how to do it, but not being afraid to spend money where it really matters to make sure you can live your best life.
Paula, that's beautiful. I'm That's a great way to end this podcast episode as well. And so I'd like to say thank you for joining us. It's been really valuable and pleasurable to have you here. If anybody would like to work with you, where's the best place for them to get hold of you?
Sure. Our website is probably one of the easiest ways, and it's whcornerstone.com. And then we are on most of the major social medias: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can find us that way, and you can find my my YouTube talk. I'm sorry, my TEDx talk, Low Tech Love: The Power of the Handwritten Note, which is hugs and handwritten notes are my two superpowers. So you can also watch that.
Fantastic. Well, I'd love to meet you in person because I'm a big hugger as well.
Oh, I would love that.
Well, thank you again. It's been such a delight to have you on the show.
Thank you, Dion. I appreciate it.